a grandparent on here, who I know very well. Um, you're all welcome. We should start off this morning by singing a song. We need to sing happy birthday to Steve Whaley. So I'd like you all to join with me while you're mute. No, we won't sing him happy birthday. I'm embarrassing him. But happy birthday, Steve. You look great. If you guys can all stay mute, that would be really helpful. We are recording this, so if anybody wants to go back over it, pick up any of the stuff we're talking about, you'll be able to via the Guildford City TV YouTube channel. We had a lot of positive feedback from our last meeting where we talked about how you can be, from a swimming point of view, the best swimming parent and best supportive parent for your swimmers. And today we're going to talk about competition. And what's dawned on us is that we've really got a couple of audiences here. We've got an audience of the parents of very young swimmers who are very new to the sport, new to competition. And when we have an audience of parents whose swimmers are already in national performance squad or the national youth squad, so and have been through a number of iterations. So we're going to try to address both audiences almost simultaneously if we can. I'm going to try to get through quite a bit of this quickly because, as I say, there are some people here who've already been through it, the experience of what all this competition's about, and then there are others who are brand new to it. Essentially, what I want to start with is, what is the competition? You know, what are we doing with competition? How do the coaches feel about what competition is? Most people think that you train and then you compete, and then they're two separate things. At Guildford City, the coaches believe that competition is literally part of the training program. So all of the training, I mean, it sounds perfectly logical and reasonable, but I think it needs to be said out loud. All of the training is geared towards competing. And you almost have to think of it as a school syllabus. We'll work through the syllabus in the pool, perfecting strokes, building stamina, building strength. On the pool side, doing our S&C work. In the gyms, doing our S&C work. And then at regular intervals, we will have a test, which is one of the competitions. And then at the end of a season, or at the end of a swimming cycle, we'll have an exam. And I think if you can think of it in that context, I think it will be easier for you. There are a lot of clubs, and Guildford was one of them way back in many years ago, where the belief was that we should compete a lot. We should compete every 2 weeks, be in the pool, just getting on with the competition. And what we have found over years of trial and error, and also working with the national governing body, is that we should be competing less and training more. Because swimming, if you miss training, if the training gets diminished because of too much competition, then the competition doesn't produce the results that you want. That's in generally what we've found. So in the last couple of years, what we've tried to do at Guildford City is to minimize competition and maximize training. And that doesn't always sit well with parents or with swimmers, because they like sprinting, they like swimming fast, they like competing. That's why they train. So we've tried to find the right balance, and we'll talk about that maybe a little later. But I wanted to give you that sort of basis of where we are in terms of our structure. The next step before we get into preparing athletes for competition is just sort of talking about the hierarchy of competition. You know, we start off with, we take us outside of COVID, where all we have right now is competing during training in these Racing X models. But if COVID doesn't exist, if we get past all this COVID control, we would have a hierarchy of competitions, which would start with a level 4 club championships or an internal gala. And level 4 means that's the license. It's a license level 4. That would be the Academy Club Championships, which generally held in June. We then go to a license level 3, which we hold generally short course at the Spectrum couple of times a year, and you can go to them other outside meets. And then we have a license level 2, which is the highest license you can get for a short course meet, generally for swimmers at very upper end of county level to regional level to national level. And then finally to a level licensed 1, which is long course, where swimmers can only compete on long course meet. And that's the highest level for swimmers, again, highest level of county, regional, and national. Along the way, you have, again, generally, January through to March, you would hold the county championships, the Surrey County Championships. Then between April and May, there would be the regional, the Southeast Region Championships. When we get into July, we're talking about holding the Home Nations Championships for Scotland, England, and Wales. And then at the end of July, there tends to be the British Summer Championships. And for those who are at the top end of the sport and older, in April, there are the British Championships, which normally twin as either a trial for the Olympic Games or the Commonwealth Games, or an international meet for juniors or for seniors. So it could be the European Short Course Championships, European Long Course Championships, European Youth Olympics, European Junior Championships. But that's basically what the calendar and the year looks like. We tend not to like to compete in September because swimmers would just come back from summer holiday and they won't be ready. And we tend to have competitions that start at the end of October from an open meet point of view with our sprint meet, which is held at the Spectrum. The Arena League, which we have 3 teams, A, B, and C, run locally in October, November, December. And then there's the national final, which is anywhere between March and April, held in Cardiff. And then there's the Junior Arena League, which is taking over from the Milton Keynes League. I'm not sure of the dates of that yet. I'm led to believe they're going to be April, May, and June if we're allowed to hold them. So that's basically the outline. And if anybody has a question about any of that, please contact your coach, because that's the essential structure to how we compete at Guildford City. Okay. So if we kick this off, then let's start preparing our athletes for competition. And a thank you to Matt Smart, Lewis Dumford, and Jan Griffith, who have all contributed to this presentation. A famous quote by Ben Franklin, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. We would like all of our athletes right down to junior county B level. So junior county B, junior county A, county A, B, and C, regional, national performance, national youth, to be the best prepared athletes they can be. And that means the minor things like showing up for your warm-up in time, not being late for warm-ups, not leaving your goggles at home, not leaving your swimming costume at home. We see that quite a bit, particularly amongst the boys. They show up and they haven't got their swimming costumes in their bag, and they blame their mother, and their mother blames them, and they're then agitated before they start the competition. If we accept that the competitions are tests and exams, and we use that analogy, then we need to have our young athletes, older athletes, doesn't matter what age, as calm and relaxed as possible so that they can enjoy the competition and go in as confident as possible. Lewis, take us through the day before competition. And then Nick, you're going to get called upon to help us translate that for the Academy.
Yeah, sure, Rich. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So yeah, just linking in with the competition. So my view of the whole thing is that the day before the competition is a great opportunity to prepare and get yourself ready for what's coming up. So on the slide, there's a few lists of a couple of key things that I believe are really, really important, and things that you can sort of do to get yourself ahead of the game and give yourself a lot of knowledge and preparation. When you go to the competition, you're ready to perform at your best. So these are quite simple things that you can just sort of apply. such as competition awareness. They're setting the scene. So do you know sort of the times of the competitions, the times of the sessions, what you're racing in each session, just simple things like that. Once you know that, you can then be better prepared to go into that the next day. Also, if you structure your day the day before, you can then slot in a good amount of recovery and rest, making sure you're getting your nutritional status and also like your hydration status. So make sure you're drinking enough and eating enough the day before to make sure when you go to the competition, you're properly fueled and ready to perform, to give yourself the best opportunity of performing at your best. In there, one of the key ones for me, the importance of the last training session. So making sure that you do attend that final training session before the competition the next day. That one can be a vital training session where you can go through a bit of race rehearsal, work on some real fine details and fine tune certain things that you want to then go and apply the next day. The number of times that we've had people come into a session the night before working on little fine details and actually going away and putting them into practice on race day, and it being the difference between placing or achieving that process goal or that outcome that they wanted to has been huge. So I can't stress enough the importance of turning up to that last training session. And then other things such as packing your racing bag. So make sure that the night before you got all of your equipment and stuff ready for the actual day ahead, because with that we've had also competitions and situations where people have turned up to competitions without their racing trunks, without their hats, without their goggles. So being in a good place to have that all packed and ready to go the night before is a fantastic idea. And also another thing, getting a work and homework done. If you can, I do appreciate sometimes it's very difficult, but if you can allocate some time in the week before leading up to the competition to go and get any work or homework done, that takes away another sort of stressful factor potentially over the weekend that can take away from your performance. And ultimately, these things can then be owned by the swimmer and create your own pre-competition plan. So the day before the competition, you can sort of plan out your day and work out what works best for you to enable you to get in a great place. So when you do turn up to competition the next day, you're fully in control of what you're about to do.
Great, thanks, Lewis. So just to go back a little bit on this for the academy parents, for the parents of newer swimmers, younger swimmers. The competition program will be set out by the coaches, and that's all the coaches individually. Each coach will have a competition program for their squad, and they're the ones that set that. And we are very specific that we only want your kids to compete at those competitions as prescribed by the coach. Please don't compete outside of that schedule unless you have express written permission from the coach. Now, you can do what you like, you're their parents, and if you want to take them to a meet in Gloucester or Swindon, that's up to you. But if you do, we will probably not put those times on our PB database because you're competing outside of our schedule. In the previous meeting, we talked about the coaches being not just coaches, but managers. We are responsible for your children's aquatic education. So there's a big note, has been there for several years on our website. We will only accept PBs from meets that we authorize. Now, if you're going down for a weekend visiting the child's grandmother in Gloucester and there's a meet on and you want to go to it, by all means, ask the coach if it's appropriate, whether that will be accepted or not. No one, the coach has to make that decision on a case-by-case basis, but just don't do it on your own bat because it's likely, we won't recognize it. That's how strong we feel about us controlling the competition program because it's linked, as I said right at the beginning, with training. So just be aware of that. So how do the parents find out about which competitions the swimmers in the squad are going to go to? Well, that's communicated by the coaches. And in normal circumstances outside of COVID, that will be also on the website and it will have the dates in that specific squad. It will show the dates of when we're going to that meet. So that's how they get notified. Who decides whether the swimmer can swim or not? Well, again, if it's Nick Brooks' group going, he will be very clear who he thinks is going to get qualified and who isn't. So which kids will go to that meet, who won't go to that meet. And in most cases, I expect the coaches of each squad to be able to say to each swimmer, this is what you should be swimming in the meet. Shouldn't be left up to the parent or the swimmer to decide that. It should be the coach directing it. And if the coach doesn't give you that direction, then I would really recommend that you contact the coach rather than cherry picking what you want to do. And listen to the coach and discuss it with them. Now, that may not be the case with National Performance Squad because you're dealing with much older swimmers, and it may not be the case with the National Youth Squad because you're dealing with much older swimmers. But certainly, regional squad downwards, it should be the coach directing what the swimmer swims. I think we'll move on at that point, and then I'll come back to some of these more these questions for the younger kids in a minute. So what's the next one? Matt, you want to take us through this?
Yeah, I can do. So competition timelines are a great thing. They're used especially in the older sort of squads. So talking about performance squad, NAYS, regional squad, we have our own timeline. But there's no reason why athletes can't be thinking about it all the way down to their first competition. It's basically just an individual timeline based around the times that the swimmer will be racing, and then how far before that they need to be doing certain things, and how far after that they need to be doing certain things. So it just allows you to take that ownership of your competition and all the processes around it, so that when you're 16, 17, 18, you're not relying on your coach to tell you when to do things. There is an example. So this is an example. Obviously, quite a lot of competitions, you don't just race the once. So you have to sort of pick this for your first race and work around it, but then you can repeat bits for each race. So I'm going to work backwards. If you're racing at 0 minutes, sort of 15 to 20 minutes before that, you're going to start that pre-race activation. So that's your sort of your land work or your prep work with Jordan or your coach, or you can do it by yourself as a group. And you should know what that pre-race activation is, what that prep work is. It might differ per race, depending on how you're feeling, but you should know what you're doing. So about 75 minutes, this is where it depends on the race times. You're going to do your pool warm-up. Yeah, so again, my swimmers will know exactly what their pool warm-up is. They'll have it probably printed out for them. They will have wrote it. They have their own one for what they're swimming that day. And we practice that during the training session, 90 minutes, so 15 or so minutes before you get into that pool warm-up, you want to be doing some activation work. Normally, this is obviously first thing in the morning. Swimmers are tired. We start warm-ups at 8 a.m. on some mornings. So you need to be doing some work to sort of wake yourself up before you get in the water. For that, so about 2 hours before we're racing, hopefully, self-check and mobility. Again, just some land work, see how you're feeling, if you're a bit tight. Might need to do some extra sort of stretching. And this all sort of comes together in that pre-race prep. You then can look 2.5 hours before your race, maybe arrive at the venue, obviously depending on where you are. If it's at Guildford, that's obviously easy, but then if we're going into the LAC for counties, you know, actually I might need to give myself a little bit more time because of parking, the walk over. And then you can plan your breakfast around that as well. So sort of 3 hours before, should be eating breakfast, and that breakfast should be then enough to last you all the way through your race. As I said, there's some bits like the pre-race activation and the race that's going to repeat, but you should have a plan for the whole day from sort of when you wake up in the morning all the way until that first race, that you're doing. There is then, this is an example of what it could look like. So this is, I believe, Lewis's for his performance squad. Okay, so swimmers would get given this at the start of the year. They'd get a chance to practice it in training, but they would write out their own specific race timeline that they will use that benefits them. And it might differ from swimmer to swimmer. Some swimmers might do their land work close to their race, but they'd put that on their own individual timeline.
Thanks, Matt. So let's, we've had a question from a parent. We've had a question from a parent on the chat, and I think it's appropriate at this point to address it. Steve, I'm going to throw this at you. So have your nutritional cap ready. So we talk about good nutritional choices, factors that may influence the day before the competition. And what we've got on our slide previously is make good nutritional choices the day before the competition. And then another question is, make good nutritional choices on the day of the competition. What does the child bring on poolside? What should the child not bring on poolside to eat? When should they eat? So, Steve, using your nutritional background, what do you believe you would recommend for County A, for instance, as good nutritional choices the day before the competition?
Okay, well, essentially, the most important thing is that you're not wanting to make any substantial changes to your normal nutrition plan the day before. It should be literally just an extension of, rather than completely changing you. So we would assume that you have a good mixed, balanced nutrition plan through your training cycle leading up to competition, and that would equate to majority carbohydrate, some fats, obviously, because fats are important for that's not saturated, that's normal fats, because that's an important part of children's development anyway. But protein is also an important key element in terms of recovery. So leading up to competition, 10, 15 years ago, there tends to be fashions and traits to the way that organisations and scientists review data over the years. There was a trend quite a while ago about wanting to carb load. That has run its course, and it's really based around making sure that you're eating what you normally eat, but at the correct times. So the best way to look at this is knowing that you've got a competition schedule ahead. Try to make sure that your breakfast is not too heavily protein loaded, and the night before, so that the meal that you have the night before, that should be the meal that has a high element of carbs, and make sure you've got vegetables and stuff in there as well, but also a reasonable amount of protein, because obviously the meal that you have in the evening, trying to make sure that you're eating before 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock generally is after that, you're tending to find that when you go to sleep, that's actually then laying in your stomach and not actually digesting properly. So you want to be making sure that you eat before 9 o'clock at the latest, to give your body the best possible chance of absorbing those nutrients. And then in the morning of competition, making sure that you try to have a normal breakfast, the breakfast that you would normally have, rather than deciding that you're at a hotel somewhere and you're going to have a full English. So if that means that planning ahead, as Lewis mentioned earlier, look at, if you're staying in a hotel, look at what is available in terms to eat. So if you're not able to have what you would normally have, try to take it with you. And then leading into the competition day itself, after you've had your breakfast, focus on trying to stay with the carbs for the majority of the day. If you've got a weekend meet where you're competing Saturday and Sunday, again, with the protein, you want to edge towards the proteins later in the day. There's a potential, obviously, let's take a Saturday. There's a potential for later in the day on a Saturday where swimmers are potentially maybe starting to, their energy levels start to drop slightly. Then you can consider a basic sugar before the final event if they really need a pep. But certainly you should be avoiding any basic sugary products throughout the day, and by that I mean anything sort of sweet. So try to stick with things that are going to have a slightly slower burst of carbs and sugar into your system. So the lower sugar indexes, preferably, like wholemeal pasta and sweet potato, stuff like that.
Thanks, Steve. We appreciate that. And so, I mean, that neatly says, without being too detailed, what parents should be giving the kids before the day before and during the competition. And what we see as coaches, particularly amongst the younger swimmers, are Skittles and chocolate bars and every manner of sweet thing you can imagine. And what happens typically is a child, a half an hour before their race, will consume a lot of sugar, and then they spike and they're mad for about 20 minutes. And literally just before they go up behind the block, the spike drops and their energy level drops, and then they swim badly. So we really recommend, please do not give your kids sweets on poolside. Don't let them bring sweets on poolside, and don't let them have sweets on poolside. But I think we've covered that off. I think on our website, and if it's not there, it should be there. There should be a whole section on nutrition now. And I would recommend parents look at that. And if you don't find what you're looking for, contact any one of us, and we'll make sure that through our sports science department, we'll get your answers, your questions answered up on the board. So we can go to the next slide, please.
Rich, can I mention something very quickly about Lewis mentioned with equipment?
Yeah, real quick though.
Yeah, we have people that sometimes bring new hats and goggles to competition, try to do that use that in training to prepare rather than bringing new equipment to race meets.
Thank you. And by the way, girls or boys with long hair should not use conditioner on their hair of the day of competition. Now, this sounds like something strange from a bald-headed 70-year-old man, but the truth of the matter is, I've seen more girls lose their caps during an 800 or 1500 freestyle because they had condition on their hair and the conditioner was very slippery and the hats came off. So don't condition your hair on the day of competition. Okay, and that comes from Richard Garfield. Competition timeline. So speak to your coach regarding the club designated competitions. If the child isn't clear about what competitions they're to enter, what competitions the squad's going to enter, what events they should enter, talk to the coach. Don't make unilateral decisions. Just think it through. Talk to the coach. Coach is there for that. They're the manager and the coach. Once you've submitted your entries for selected competition, create your own personal timeline. Lewis will probably happy to share that template that we saw earlier. And all you have to do is email him and he'll send it out to you. Right, Lewis? Right, Rich. Check and agree your timeline with your coach. Remember, your timeline will grow and it will evolve with you, and then have fun following the process and executing your timeline. And we're recommending this for the younger swimmers and less experienced swimmers as much as we are for our older senior swimmers. Next slide, please. Right, so before we hit one of the big topics, we got half an hour left, and quite a lot of it's going to go down to motivation, and we'll hopefully answer people's questions about how we keep nerves under control. I just, again, want to make sure that we're addressing some of the questions for some of the younger squads. I mentioned earlier that we really recommend that you get your swimmer to the pool on time. That means early. I can't recommend that enough. I see kids coming in late, missing warm-up or missing bits of warm-up. They're flustered, and in that initial fluster, because they haven't arrived calmly, because they're not in control of the circumstances, they tend not to have great meets, or the first several races are upset because they're still sort of feeling their nerves are jangled. This is a tough call, but really recommend that people get to meets early, and that you triple, quadruple check the equipment before you get in the car. Just make sure they got their hats and their goggles. As Steve said, you do not want to be trying out new goggles on race day, or a new hat, or conditioning your hair. You want to have everything that's worked before working right, because inevitably you put a new pair of goggles on, they don't fit, and it rattles the swimmer, and we're trying to keep people calm. The protocol is sign in. And again, we see this happen a lot, even with experienced swimmers. They say they come in late, or they come in and they're rattled. They say to their mum, please sign me in, which is a big place where you sign in, and then that tells the meet organizers that they're going to swim. The kid goes off to get changed. The parent gets engaged in the conversation, forgets to sign the child in, and the child then doesn't get a swim. That's a disaster of biblical proportions. People really suffer from that. And that happens at every meet we go to. Somebody fails to sign in. And of course, the coach gets blamed, but it's got nothing to do with the coach. Just make sure that you understand sign in, and it is part of the day. You have to know when to sign in, what's the cut on sign in, and you've got to be, we would want the swimmer to sign in, not the parent to take responsibility. It's very important that the child learns that part of the procedure. How long do parents have to stay in the balcony? You can drop your kid off and you can pick them up later. You don't have to stay in the balcony. The coaches will be absolutely happy to and do take responsibility for the child while they're on poolside. The club does and the coach does. The final bit before we get to motivation for the younger parents or parents of younger swimmers is when the child finishes the race. So the protocol is before the child goes up to the race, they get talked to by the coach. And as soon as the child finishes the race, they get talked to by the coach. And then they warm down if there's a warm down facility. Please do not get your child to break that protocol. So when the race is over, don't beckon them up to the balcony to tell you, for you to tell them either how they should have swum or how proud you were. They'll know because you'll signal them from the balcony and wave to them and throw them kisses, but don't interact with them in coaching. Let the coach follow that protocol with the athlete. Talk before by the coach, swim, talk afterwards by the coach, a debrief, then a warm down, and then there tends to be a longer debrief after the warm down. It's really important that we hold that protocol and that you guys all follow it. You will help your swimmer immensely by allowing that to happen. Right. Tackling motivation, which hopefully will also help the nervous competitor who stands behind the block and just gets more nervous. Let's go to Matthew on this one if we can. Matt, types of motivation?
Yeah, so...
Speak up a little, Matt. You're a bit faint. I don't think you're in Surrey. You must be in Hampshire.
Yeah, it's that Hampshire side of things. Let me turn the microphone up. Any better?
No.
Oh wow, that's better.
There it is. That's better.
So we have two different types of motivation. So obviously we have intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Motivation on itself is just, as it says there, the enthusiasm for doing something or the need or reason for doing something. So it's basically why we swim. Yeah, why swimmers swim, why coaches get up each day and coach. And we got those two types of motivation. So intrinsic is behavior driven by internal rewards. So that's things that come from inside you. So the feelings you get when you swim. So all the swimmers will know that feeling they get when they PB. That's a really great feeling, but it can come down to things like enjoyment. So just the fact that you enjoy being in the water, the fact that you have the opportunity to learn, happiness, so the reward, but it's all stuff inside you. The extrinsic motivation is the external rewards. So things like medals, gifts, fame, the praise from your parents or your coach. So this is the things that are external to you that motivate you to swim, essentially.
Great. Matt, would you recommend that a parent offer their child a financial reward for achieving a PB or making a county qualifying time or winning a gold medal?
I personally, especially young swimmers, I don't think that it's necessary, but I think it comes down to understanding your swimmer. Ideally, we want a mixture of intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic tends to be the one that we want the more of, because you're not always going to get those PBs, those gifts, if you get a gold medal, it's not going to happen all the time. So if you're only motivated by those things, then you're not really going to make it in the sport. So especially say at a young age, if you're offering rewards out for PBs and stuff like that, that's only sort of going to last in the short term. That's not going to suddenly help their development in the sport. So I try to reduce it as much as possible.
Great. Let's move to the next slide. I'm still concerned as we look at the role of coaches in motivating swimmers. How do we help with nerves? I'm not sure we're there yet, but hopefully by the time we get to 10:30, we'll have solved that one. So most people know I don't coach on a day-to-day basis anymore. I run the club with a management team. I do get to coach, and when I do, I remember why I went into this business in the first place, because it's a joy to be able to coach athletes, whether they be in the teaching pool or in Surrey Sports Park. It's the joy of my life, and to inspire swimmers on a day-to-day basis is what the coach needs to be doing. Steve Wadey and I took over the running of this club back in the late 1990s, and our view was, if we go into battle, we want our swimmers to go into battle with us, and if they went into battle with us, we knew we were doing the right job. And I use that expression battle because it is a competition. Life is a competition, and our club is a competitive club, maybe the most competitive club in the Southeast, certainly one of them, certainly the most competitive in Surrey. And it is about wanting to be the best. It is about trying to strive to be the best. And that's what we should be inspiring our athletes to do, to be the best, to win, and to enjoy that process and being part of a winning organization. I had a chat with a parent the other day who called me, and I said, sometimes we don't think about what we do as being actually swim coaches. We think that we're preparing swimmers for life skills, how to be dedicated, how to be disciplined, how to have something that stands in front of you as impossible, a training set, or a competition where you have to stand behind the blocks and maybe you have to swim a 1500 where you feel completely uncomfortable, or the other ones that everybody's terrified of: 400 IM, long course, 200 fly, long course, 800 freestyle, 1500 freestyle. To stand behind the blocks just before you dive in, to know that you have to deal with that, and then learning how to deal with that, that's a life lesson, because it prepares you for interviews, for jobs, it prepares you for school exams, it prepares you for everything. It's just the preparation for life, and we hopefully are doing that at Guildford, and we aim to, it sounds pompous, but we do aim to achieve that. The coach should try to make swimming training and competition enjoyable for every athlete. And believe it or not, we actually try to do that. Some kids just don't want to be there, so that's impossible. Well, they're doing it because they want to make their parents happy, so they show up for training. Lewis, talk about riding sessions that are mentally and physically stimulating for the swimmers.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I put this bit in there because I feel it's very important as the role of the coach to make sure that the sessions that we write are individualized, but also are interesting for the swimmers as well. So that's why some of our sessions are varied for the different abilities, and also each different session is structured in a way that is stimulating for each swimmer. So there could be some challenges set in there, such as stroke counting, stroke rates, or underwater kick counts, or other different variables that are there to challenge athletes, with little internal competition essentially going on within sets, and also giving the swimmers a challenge. And that's what they want to do. That's what they turn up for, to be challenged and to enjoy it. So it's our role as a coach to make sure every session that we write is there to mentally and physically stimulate the swimmers.
And Nikki Matthews, how do you educate and challenge your swimmers to maximize their potential? Nikki, there?
Yep, I'm here, sorry. So just educating them, making the sessions as challenging as possible, as varied as possible, making sure that everybody is getting what they need out of the session, and making sure it's not just the things that they enjoy. So pushing them, making them aware that to be in an uncomfortable place is a good thing to have, good thing to be.
Yeah, well done. And Nick Brooks, Talk about this, provide a safe space for athletes to express themselves.
Okay, so in terms of the relationship between coach and swimmer, it's very important that the kid can go to the coach with anything, be that personal, be that swimming related. It's an open space for that swimmer to feel comfortable in their swimming environment, whether that be with their friends in the lane, with other lanes, or with their coaches. The happier a swimmer is, the better they are going to be swimming, the more they're going to get out of each session. So providing that safe space where a swimmer can open a dialogue, or a coach can open a dialogue with a swimmer if they feel that it's necessary, is really important to actually get the best out of each swimmer.
Well done. Let's move on to the next slide, please. And Sergey, I'm going to want you to help us through with this one. Are you up for it, Sergey?
Yep, sure.
Great. So, Sergey, just let's talk about this swimmers motivating themselves, because this is the intrinsic avenue that Matt, I believe, talked about earlier. Making sure that the stimulation is coming from within rather than from without. So, Sergey, just take us through this slide, if you would.
Yeah, just quickly read through it. Yeah, obviously, if you look at elite level sport, as maybe swimming or any other sport, every athlete aims to do the best they can for them. It's not the coaches motivating them on a day-to-day basis. I think they want to work hard. They want to do the best they can for them and not for anyone else. Then they're not looking for any other rewards or extrinsic motivation. So yeah, they have their goals, training, weekly goals. Just looking through the slide. Completing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I haven't read the slide, so yeah, that's it from me.
Okay, well, you know, one of the questions that a parent has raised is, how can you take a nervous swimmer who finds that the longer they wait behind the block, the more nervous they become? The answer is that we need to try to help them to control those nerves before they get behind the block, so that when they're behind the block, the nerves don't kick in. Now, you know, I've said from my swimming way back in the early 60s or 50s and 60s was, I think there were times when I was on the block and I thought that the people I knew in the gallery could actually see my heart beating. I was so nervous, or they could see the butterflies flying out of my mouth. I was so nervous. So I understand that nervousness, and you know, there are sometimes deep psychological reasons why someone gets nervous about performance. You know, performance failure, the need to succeed in front of your parents, the need to succeed in front of your peers, just the pressures that we all feel. But I think this is to be addressed in a maybe a different environment. However, I think that some of those nerves can be minimized by this intrinsic motivation, because I think that the more the child athlete wants to do it for themselves, wants to achieve for themselves, and not for their parent or for their coach, the more chance they have of minimizing those nerves. And then that comes back down to how much pressure the parent is either obviously putting on the child or not so obviously putting on the child. Sometimes the parent doesn't put any pressure on the kid or doesn't think they are, but the child still feels that they're getting pressured by the parent, or that's where the motivation comes from. And that becomes a really complicated balance. Let's go to that next slide, guys. So the healthy balance is we feel that the child, the swimmer, should be intrinsically motivated with support and guidance from the network of coaches, family, and friends. Okay? And I think the more intrinsic motivation an athlete has, the less chance of nervousness that they'll have. I'm not saying it will completely obviate it, but I believe it will help minimize it. One of the things that we're very hot on at Guildford is keeping our swimmers in the sport forever. All right. There's nothing more satisfying for us as coaches is to see a swimmer who joins us at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and is swimming with us into masters, swims with us all the way through their teenage years, goes to university, maybe away from us, swims at university, comes back and then joins our masters. It's a great feeling. It's part of the Guildford family, and we really welcome and want it to happen. So intrinsic motivation will probably keep a swimmer in the sport longer. If you think about it, as soon as puberty hits, as most parents know who've got children who've gone through puberty or going through puberty, the child's motivation changes anyway. Their whole world turns upside down in most cases. If you're lucky and you don't go through that as a parent, then that's great. But most parents go through that. So, you'll have something will motivate a child up to the age of 12 or 13, and then at 14 onwards, if that's where puberty hits, then that's when the motivation changes. And I see that a lot. Over the years, I've seen that so much. We go away for a summer break for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and we come back and the child's completely changed and their motivation has changed. They're not wanting to please mum and dad anymore, so they don't want to train so much anymore in some cases. Or they didn't want to train very much before, but now they've found religion and they want to train. So you can't predict what's going to happen. So ownership and accountability, we talked about that at our last meeting, of wanting parents to release more of their children, try to let the child be self-motivated, and for the relationship to develop between the coach and the child rather than the parent interfering or being the manager. And it's a tough call because we get to a point where there's the break and where we want the child to be separated from the parent as much as we can, within reason. And again, as coaches, we see a lot of kids suffer and struggle with motivation. And what we want to do is try to find the healthy balance so that we can help them keep enjoying the sport. Next slide, please. I think we've reached the end of our slides. Just want to look through, and I want to talk in a minute about the COVID competitions that we think are coming up, so that you're all informed and we've got you up to date, because as recently as last night, we heard from Surrey County about what their auxiliary alternative plans are. I think if you've got any questions, it would be a good time now to put them in the chat. So if you can type them, then we can address them. But while we're waiting for anybody else to come through with a question, I just want to touch base on the competitions that we see coming up. So immediately in the calendar there, and by the way, we don't know when we're coming back to training. That's still, we have no idea. We don't know when schools are coming back to education, and we don't know when we're coming back to training. I don't even want to speculate. But the Olympic trials are supposed to start on the 13th of April. So for anybody, the 50-odd swimmers who qualified for that, which is a club record, we're supposed to be at the London Aquatic Centre on the 13th of April for a week. And I find that hard to believe that we're going to go or that it's going to happen, but that's up in the air. You've got to train for it. The Japanese and the IOC have said that the Olympic Games are going to take place, but again, who knows? I think the Japanese are banking on the vaccines being rolled out across the world. In date order, the regional championships are penciled to take place in April and May, and the county championships are scheduled, the current plan is for them to take place in May. Let me just make a look at this. I think June, excuse me. Surrey Championships are supposed to take place this year in June and early July and late July. Now that may not happen. It all depends on what the government says that the national governing bodies will be allowed to do. We just won't know any of this until we get closer to those dates. What Surrey has come up with for the Surrey County Championship is an alternative plan, so that if we're not allowed, if they're not allowed to hold the county championships in June and July, then the Surrey County Championships will take place in each club under the Level X training competition program. And those competitions would be run between the 1st of April and would have to finish by the 31st of May. What we would do is we would submit all of the results for all of the age groups and all of the events to the county officials, who would then take all those results and put them in a spreadsheet, and there would be a final held sometime during the year for the top 8 swimmers in each age group in each event at Surrey Sports Park, probably short course. Yeah. So that's the alternative to holding the traditional county championships, is that we would hold a Level X county championships, if you like, for heats or preliminary rounds, and then the top 8 as posted into the Surrey Championships via the Racing X database would get selected for finals. Okay? And that's where we kind of stand with competition. Now, one of our parents has just said, COVID is really challenging the motivation of swimmers. How much do you think this will have an impact on the long term, especially for the older swimmers? We're reaching out to you today. We have meetings with our swimmers per squad, in most squads almost every week. We're holding competitions of talent, making food, fun, friends. We're doing everything we can to stay in contact with our swimmers, because we know how hard this is. I mean, it's really hard for the coaches, and we meet every week. In fact, the academy coaches meet twice a week just to stay in contact with each other, just to stay motivated, inspired, just to stay in a team. I'm not sure what the long-term impact is going to be on older swimmers. I know that when we opened again in July and August after the first lockdown, we had a tsunami of swimmers who wanted to join us from other clubs or in the younger age groups just coming in and swimming for the first time. And we anticipate that as soon as we open again after this lockdown, we will have another tsunami. And that's a good thing, because we're a very competitive, as I keep saying, club. The more competitive swimmers we have join us, the better the swimmers train and the better results we get from most of our athletes. Some of our other questions is April not early, as the swimmer will not be back in the pool until middle of March? Yes, well, I can't do anything about the Olympic trials. The irony is we're a Swim England performance centre, and we have not been allowed to train our elite athletes. Whereas in Scotland, each of the Scottish equivalent centres, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Stirling, and Glasgow, have been allowed to open and train their elite athletes. And the English equivalent have not been allowed to by UK sport, which you can only imagine what I'm thinking. It's disgusting. Thank you for recognizing that Jordan Niblock, our S&C coach, is doing an amazing job. Highly recommend you follow him on a daily basis. He's a very motivated young man and very, very good at what he does, and a very caring coach. How are we going to prepare our swimmers for coming back after being out for so long and being on a level playing field? the truth of the matter is they won't be on a level playing field. There'll be some people who will be fitter because they've been doing the S&C work with Jordan, or they've been doing running, or they've been doing some sort of aerobic exercise. It still won't make them swim fit, but it will make them fitter than the guy who just sat and watched TV the whole time. And that's just the way of the world. I'm going to come back fitter than Steve Wadey because I go to the gym every day, and you know, he's got less hair than me. I think that pretty much covers it, and we've almost done an exact hour. I hope it helps. If you would like there to be another meeting of parents say in 2 weeks' time, you know, send your emails to us. You might even suggest topics that we can talk about. We're really keen on engaging with you. I think I said in the previous meeting, I spent 20 years pushing you away, and now I want you to come in and be my friend. Not really. I just want to make sure that we're engaging with the parents, because even though we want you to let us coach your kids, we need you to help us coach your kids. It's a funny balance. I can't deny it. We are passionate and obsessed with this sport, and it is terribly frustrating for coaches, and I know swimmers, and I know parents, that we're not allowed to be in the water, but soon we will be. And I've already had the suggestion for the next presentation from one of the mums, and I think it probably will be on nutrition and hydration, and we'll probably get our sports scientists to Heloise to come and have a chat and do the slides. So thanks everybody. If the coaches can just stay behind for a bit, and then we'll just say bye to the parents and grandparents. And thanks everybody for your time, and we hope to see you again soon. And we're back in the water soon. Take care.